It's your Wednesday daily delivery. I'm Michael Rand, glad to be back for another day and to bring you another really good show. Got Phil Miller from the Star Tribune joining me here in just a few minutes to break down the Twins at the trade deadline. You might think that would be an incredibly short and boring segment because they did not do anything on Tuesday, but you would be wrong because Phil and I found plenty to talk about in that activity, in the inactivity as well, and plenty of Twin stuff beyond just the trade deadline to get to. Some injury concerns starting to mount. Where do they go from here? What does the roster look like for the rest of the season now that this is their team? And they did win 3-2 on Tuesday, snapping that 5-game losing streak. So a good win for them in St. Louis. 2 games up now on Cleveland. So, it's not the end of the world that they didn't do anything, but Phil and I will get into some of the reasons why and some of the frustration maybe from fans that they stood pat even with the division very much within their grasp. Also get to Anthony Edwards at the end of the show, something new you will be seeing from Ant this season, something that he's not done yet as a Timberwolf in his first few years here. First, though, what did I miss? Let's start with the Vikings and their light pursuit, or fairly serious pursuit, I guess, of guard Dalton Risner. And they bring him in for a free agent visit this week. He leaves without signing a contract. Just reading from the Vikings notebook today, Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. This is Ben Gessling writing about it. He was here, did not, had a physical examination, met with a bunch of people in the building. Kevin O'Connell said, "We care deeply about our locker room culture. The fit of players is always going to be something we have a lot of dialogue about," in explaining why they wanted to bring him in addition to not just having negotiations, but actually bring him in for a visit. Now, the Vikings guard situation. Dalton Risner is a guard. And if you were going to pick a weak point on the line, it's definitely the interior. And it's probably pointing right at Ed Ingram, who had a Ben terms it uneven rookie year, and I think that was pretty kind, although he did have his moments. He played a lot of snaps last year, but he also gave up a lot of pressures, a lot of quarterback hits, and a lot of quarterback sacks, a fair amount of penalties as well. Compared to Dalton Risner, there is no comparison between their 2022 seasons, which is why this other O'Connell quote was kind of funny to me. He said, "It would be pure speculation on my part to envision what a player not on our team would potentially do to that situation. One thing I will say is we want this to be as competitive in all situations as we possibly can. Competition tends to make everybody better. We feel we've got great competition already at that particular position and are still seeking daily growth." This was purely about taking something we feel is pretty strong and investigating the possibility of making it even better. No, it is not. That is not a position of strength right now. You do not bring in a free agent, the guy who's probably the top of the market for guards right now. He's not an all-pro, but he's a pretty good guard, especially in pass protection, which I'll get to in a minute. You do not bring someone like that in August if you feel good about your depth, if you feel good about your starting 5 on the offensive line. Maybe these guys all watched the quarterback documentary. They saw Kirk Cousins get absolutely battered last year, the most hits of any quarterback in the NFL. Ed Ingram was a part of that. He was not the only part of that, but he played a big role. Ed Ingram gave up 3 times as many quarterback hits as Dalton Risner last year and twice as many quarterback pressures. Allowed 11 sacks and 4 penalties. Dalton Risner last year, 1 sack and 3 penalties. So there you go. Risner was charged with protecting Russell Wilson in Denver. That year was a disaster. It keeps becoming more apparent what a disaster is because now Nathaniel Hackett is firing back at Sean Payton for ripping him last week. That story continues to be funny, but this story, staying on topic, this would be a good get for the Vikings. This is not like a Super Bowl or bust kind of move. I would be curious to see what kind of contract terms they are looking for in this case, but I'll also be curious to see what the full impact of the Danielle Hunter contract is on the Vikings salary cap. And there's still some things they can do this offseason, some levers they can pull. TJ Hawkinson extension, Justin Jefferson extension, things like that could manipulate the cap a little bit more, push some stuff to future years. But guard is a position of relative concern right now. Ezra Cleveland has been improving, I think, steadily, but he's not under contract anything beyond this season. Ed Ingram is under contract, but he needs to have some growth this season, and maybe he can. Year 1 to year 2, guys can do plenty. But if we're just talking about an apples to apples comparison of the 2022 seasons, Dalton Risner is light years ahead of Ed Ingram, especially in pass protection. Then they also have Chris Reed. He's their veteran backup, but he's still on the PUP list. We do not have a timeline for his return. So let's just be honest. It's a position of weakness. It's a position of deficiency. Maybe they don't want to admit that for negotiating tactics to not make their current guys feel bad. But if you bring in a guy for a visit this late in the game, this guy's been a free agent for months. If you bring him in now, that is you acknowledging that you don't have exactly what you want right there, even if you say that the competition is good and you feel good about what you've got regardless.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, premixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to mgmwineandspirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
I've got Phil Miller, Star Tribune Twins beat writer, with me here today. And just because the Twins didn't do anything on Tuesday, Phil, doesn't mean we can't do anything right now. I think it bears some analysis of maybe why, outside of the Jorge Lopez offloading trade for another middle reliever, there was nothing that was done at this deadline, even for a team that has some pretty obvious needs, is still in first place now by 2 games in the AL Central, a very winnable division. I guess from your perspective, Phil, why? I'll get to Derek Falvey's explanation in a minute, but why do you think this just didn't materialize as an opportunity to upgrade a roster?
Well, I have to say, if you look around at who did get traded, you wonder, outside of some of the pitchers, you wonder who exactly the Twins might have wanted. I mean, Jake Burger got traded. Would he have been a fit? Not really. Tommy Pham might have stepped in, but he's kind of bounced around a little bit. I guess a journeyman type like that might have helped. I don't know, AJ Pollock, guys like that. I can't say that there's anybody that you that jumps out at you as that's the guy that would have helped. All in all, after listening to Derek Falvey, he didn't mention names, but we asked him, how are you going to beat left-handed pitching?
Yeah,
this team has the worst batting average, the worst slugging percentage, and the worst on-base percentage in baseball against left-handers. And he didn't mention names, but the gist of his answer was, well, we went out and signed Carlos Correa, and we've got Byron Buxton. That's a pretty good place to start. Jorge Polanco, is a switch hitter.
Right.
He talked about, guys need to step up. He sold the lack of movement as not a show that, we're not trying to help.
Right.
He said, we've got parts here to do it. I don't know. After watching them flail against Ryan Yarbrough on Sunday, it's really easy to be skeptical about that. But I just look around all the trades and I think, well, who exactly did they miss out on? I was a little surprised by that, and I think more teams were looking for pitching, and it turned out more found pitching than the hitters that the Twins need. I don't know. Would Josh Bell have moved the needle? They weren't going to get him, but I mean, that's their chief competitor dumping him.
Right.
It just wasn't an impressive list.
No, that's true. And, I don't speak Falvey's as fluently as you probably do, but when he said we had some clear buy-side conversations with teams that said we might be interested in doing a deal like that, We just need to see what happens over the next 4 to 5 days, what ultimately happened over those 4 to 5 days as things changed. It shrunk the market a bit. I think that's kind of what you're getting at, right? That maybe some players they thought were going to be available or looked like they could be available simply either weren't available or weren't available at a reasonable price at the end.
Oh, definitely. The Angels is deciding to add players,
Right.
change the market. They went out and traded for CJ Crone. CJ was really good when he was here in 2019. I'm sure that the fact that the Angels were buying and not selling changed things. The Yankees supposedly had a lot of talks about offloading some of their guys. I don't know that would have been a great match for the Twins, but they decided to hold. I think that's why I asked him. I did ask him, did 5 straight losses change your thinking at all? But of course, they're in the AL Central. They lost 5 straight games, were a game above 500, now 2 games above 500. And they, they're still in first place. And,
by 2 games. Yeah.
And Cleveland offloaded their best pitcher this year, right?
Yes.
It's not hard to think of them as the likely division winners, assuming they don't melt down as they did last year. And that does come with the benefit of a playoff spot. And you just, the trick is getting into the tournament. And after that, starting pitching makes a big difference. Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And not just a playoff spot. One of the reasons it surprised me that they didn't do anything this year, and of course they did go for it last year, and I'll get to that in a minute because that did not go well in retrospect. But if you look at the format of the playoffs now, if you're trying to win the division as the third division winner, which they often have been in these scenarios where they've made the postseason over the last 2 decades, it's different now. You're as the third division winner, which they almost certainly would be this year if they won the AL Central. You're playing the 6th seed. You've got a 3-game series all at home. You've got a very winnable first-round matchup. Now, I wouldn't look at this roster and say World Series potential. I mean, any team can go as once they get there. But the opportunity with the way this has changed now, I mean, especially if you get a bye, which they weren't going to get, but even if you are a division winner, you have a very good chance to win a playoff game, win a playoff series, stop that streak at least. I don't know. I mean, maybe they feel like they've got the team at least to get to the postseason. They can do all this anyway, but adding to that while other teams are subtracting felt like it might have given them that's that extra edge in a year where the division is even worse than usual.
Yeah, and it's also true though that that might seem like a great prize, although we don't have to think very far back to recall that all division championships used to get you to the AL Division Series, and now you kind of have to play your way into it. Easy as that path may be. Yeah, it's true. They you only have to look back at the Phillies last year, who had to take the same path. They were the 6th seed in the National League, got to the World Series, won a couple of games there. So there is value in doing that. You're right. It would have shored up their chances there. I just think no matter who they play, they're going to face lefty in the playoffs, right? I mean, and maybe Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton have turned things around by then. That's certainly what the Twins are counting on. I will say that Correa's reputation is okay, all-star level regular season player, but rises to the occasion in the playoffs.
Sure.
Is a big game player. We'll have to see if that plays out. He occasionally this season really looks lost. That's what's killing him against left-handed pitching. But it is a prize worth winning. Opportunity lost, I guess, but Starting pitching means so much in the postseason, and that's where you start with the strength of the Twins.
No, that's true. I think that's fair. And I think they're still, like you said, certainly the favorite to emerge from the division, especially as we saw, like we said, Cleveland making some trades to lose some of their, at least Savale, one of their better pitchers, and then, watching Chicago completely fall apart. And I don't think Detroit's a real factor here, even though they're not that far out of things. But if you just look at the history with Falvey and Levine, and I wrote about this a little bit today, or I'm sorry, Tuesday. They've been better when they've been in kind of seller mode. They've done some nice deals. I mean, Joe Ryan, like you just talked about, Joan Duran was a 2018 acquisition. They've made some good trades. Even the Barrios trade I thought was good. Those guys haven't panned out yet, but those were two like top 5 prospects with Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson. But when they've been buyers, they just haven't really done much. And I do wonder if last year, where they do the Lopez trade, Fulmer was okay. That was fine. That was kind of a lower leverage deal. But the Malley trade, especially, where they've given up 2 guys now who are looking like they're going to be pretty good for the Reds. Spencer Steer would certainly look good in their lineup right now, and I don't know if they could have projected that. Did last year maybe make them a little bit more cautious, or also probably emptied their arsenal a little bit in terms of what they could offer other teams this year at the deadline as well?
Yeah, they do have some other tradable prospects. I know that teams were after, but yeah, at some point you need to keep them for yourself, especially if you're floundering as much. It's difficult. Yeah, they traded for 3 pitchers last year, and it's likely that none of them will ever throw a pitch for the Twins again here a year later, while they get to watch highlights of their best players, best prospects on the Reds these days. I doubt that played a big role. For one thing, they were looking for something different, but it might have made them think, none of those guys made a difference last year. That was one lesson of it. They got 3. It seemed like a real haul they made at the trade deadline, and none of them really had a great impact down the stretch, and none of them were going to have an impact going forward. So, I doubt that it held them up from making a deal for a hitter, but lesson learned, I guess.
In addition to that, though, you look at their roster right now, and you look at kind of how they're constructed, where they're headed. Our colleague Bobby Nightingale Jr., your beat partner now, he's in St. Louis. They won 3-2 on Tuesday. A good game from Pablo Lopez. Some timely hitting there. I think it was Solano that had the pinch hit, 2-run single in the 7th to kind of push them over the top in that one. But you kind of I looked at his notes from today. Brock Stewart doesn't seem like he's close to getting back. He threw like 94 in a bullpen, but still having pain in his forearm. And I see Kirilloff now getting an MRI on Monday. Level of concern on those two is pretty high, because if you're thinking about, hey, I know we didn't add anybody, but we got these guys coming back. Like, if Stewart's not coming back for a while, and if Kirilloff is, if this shoulder is anything serious, like I know they've got a lot of left-handed hitting first baseman outfielders, but he was the one that was actually hitting really well, and that's a hole in their lineup right now if he's out for any significant amount of time.
Yeah, AL Player of the Week 2 weeks ago. So it's a big loss, and it is alarming how Rocco first told us Friday in Kansas City that he'll probably get Sunday off so he can have Sunday and Monday, and then he came out of the game Saturday not feeling right. The shoulder was clearly getting worse, and next thing you knew, he's on the injured list. And then send to see what's going on in there with an MRI. It does not sound good, and if he's out for any extended period of time, well, we're back on the Joey Gallo adventure.
Yes.
With him playing third base. I mean first base. He was so good in April. He's such an unusual player. I have been fascinated this season watching how effortless it seemed for him in April, and how clueless he seems in the depths of this. And you think this can't be the same player. The mile-high pop-ups, the 480-foot home runs. He has been an interesting player. And then I discovered that in 4 months' time, he has 12 hits this season on 2-strike counts. Wow. You get him to 2 strikes 3 times a month. Jeez. He will get a hit with 2 strikes. I looked it up. Joe Mauer hit like 268 or something on 2 straight counts. Yeah. And Joey Gallo is batting about 068.
Oh, jeez.
With 2 strikes. So yeah, if you get him to 2 strikes, he's about gone. He strikes out about 70% of the time and has 12 hits with 2 strikes. I asked him about his 2-strike approach. I will also say that the 068 or whatever it is one of the lowest averages on 2 strikes in baseball history. Wow. Among the guys who play, like 6th or 7th lowest ever. Essentially tied with his average last season.
Oh my gosh!
It's 2 years in a row.
He's been the same guy. Yeah, he's the same guy. Yeah,
it is quite something to watch, and I've distracted myself from the question, just going on.
That's okay. That's okay. He's fascinating.
Watching the Joey Gallo experience, but like a lot of teams, they stick with him in hopes of him going on one of those 4 homers a week stretches.
Yeah. Kirilloff is one thing. Brock Stewart is another. And, Duran got the save Tuesday. He did give up a homer in the 9th, but he got a couple strikeouts. He's had a few rough outings lately, though. And if he's, it seemed like he was a little bit worn down in there, but it could just be going through a stretch where he got hit a little bit. But, and Bobby Witt was hitting everything in Kansas City. So I guess there's that piece of it, too. The home run he gave up, I think it was Friday in that game. I think it was Friday night when they. Yep. When they got walked off in the in extra innings after going up 5-4. But if we're talking about the bullpen now, like Stewart was doing great for a while, then he was on the injured list. What's the trust level? What's the pecking order right now, especially if Duran is not quite as lights out as he was for the first 3 months of the year?
Well, what choice do they have?
Right. I know.
Without Stewart, I mean, they've got Jackson Thielbar looked like a great setup pair, and then Stewart was the surprise of camp and the surprise of the early part of the season. I don't, that's the pecking order. They are using Pagan in the 7th or 8th to get to those guys, but Jack's rode for 3.5 months on. He hadn't given up a home run all year. And he gave up 2 in a week, and the wheels start coming off. The problem is that offense is so quiet on so many nights.
Yeah,
they've played so many close games that every run by the bullpen seems like it gets magnified because it puts a game in jeopardy or it costs them a game. That's the other thing about beefing up the lineup would have helped. And again, I can't blame the Twins front office for saying, well, we've got a 2-time, 3-time All-Star shortstop, who we brought in to hit. Why isn't he hitting?
Yeah,
so
that'd be nice.
And same with Byron Buxton. I understand where they come from, but Stewart's absence is a really big deal because they don't trust anybody but Duran, Jax, and kind of Pagan. We'll see how Floro does. I know Rocco talked up the idea of having a ground ball pitcher that doesn't give up home runs. I don't think he's at this point in his career he's a setup guy anymore, but they might not have many chances if Brock doesn't come back, and if Thielbar isn't the same as he was in years past.
I want to circle back on Correa and Buxton in a minute. Maybe we'll finish there, but I did want to ask you, are we too hard on Pagan? Because he's actually been, I feel like every time he starts pitching well, we start to trust him, and then he has a blow-up game in a really high leverage situation. But he was good again Tuesday, a pretty clean inning in the seventh, a scoreless inning. ERA is down to 3.23 now, and I know a lot of that's been in some of those lower leverage roles, but they're starting to have to use him again in more of those kind of sixth and seventh inning games still within reach, or in this case they were tied, I think 1-1 when he came into the game. What do we make of trusting Emilio Pagan and where they're at with that?
If you talk to him, he says his stuff is as good as it's ever been. This is peak Emilio Pagan, which makes the game he blew a couple weeks ago. It's just a flashback, just a reminder of it just all seems to go south in the highest leverage games for him. I think I think they want to keep him in the seventh inning role. I think they want him to be followed by Thielbar and Jax, and I think they still trust those guys more. We're probably too hard on Emilio Pagan for how he's pitched this year, but you don't get to erase what happened last year.
No.
So I do it for 2 more months, and maybe we'll give you a cleaner slate next year. But I have a hard time seeing how they trust him with anything late. But like I say, the trouble is they had how many extra inning games in a row in the last week. Every game is high leverage, it seems like. So they have no choice a lot of the time lately.
By the way, I didn't notice this until now, but Cleveland didn't just get shut out. They got no hit by the Astros tonight. Valdez with a 93 pitch no hitter. All he gave up was a walk in the fifth inning. There's a double play in that inning, so he faced the minimum in the game. So that's not great for Cleveland. Good for the Twins. Who
needs Verlander?
Who needs Verlander? Exactly. Verlander back to Houston. That was a interesting development. But you're right. A lot of this need is predicated on Correa and Buxton just have not hit like they thought they would hit, and frankly, how they're getting paid to hit, and frankly, how their track record suggests they should hit. Are they any closer to understanding why they have not hit in 4 months this season? There's been little stretches, but by and large, these guys have been disappointing. Why is that?
And it's not that they're not hitting. Like, he's having an off year. They were both. I don't know if Correa got below 200, but
Buxton did.
Buxton got below 190, and Correa has been right around 200. They're not. It's not like they're not hitting. It's like they're killing the lineup on a lot of days. Buxton hitting below 200, and Correa leading the league in double plays. So many rallies those guys have killed, and it just makes no sense. When Buxton started the year so strong, and Correa, they take last year's Carlos Correa.
He was good last year. They were both good last year. Yeah.
And he came on in September. He was about the only guy playing well in September. But it's fairly mystifying how these two guys can not just. It's not like a downturn. It's like suddenly they're Joey Gallo. It's like they are killing rally after rally, and I wish I had an answer. I'd be a hitting coach if I knew that. But I will say that he didn't name names, but like I said, Derek Falvey made it pretty clear that they feel like they've got the guys that should be carrying the offense, and when is that going to start?
Well, we'll see if the tactic of not doing anything at the deadline ends up being, good. I mean, it's certainly possible they win this division regardless, and it's certainly possible that there weren't, viable moves to be made that would have been more than just window dressing. It wouldn't have been significant upgrades. And we do remember the first year of Falvey and Levine when they thought they were maybe buyers and got Jaime Garcia, then thought maybe they were sellers and traded Jaime Garcia and traded Kinsler, and then they went and got the wild card anyway. So anything can happen. It's not all about the deadline, but I think maybe people were wanting a little bit more, and I think fans were a little bit frustrated on Tuesday.
Yeah, what you should hold on to is your better than 50% chance of getting into the playoffs now. And in that 3-game series, you're going to start Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez. You'll have Kenta Maeda, and I kind of skipped over Bailey Ober, but oh, by the way, he was leading the team in WAR
yes,
a week or so ago. Got hit a little bit last time, but those guys give you a real fighting chance to surprise people and to go farther than you should otherwise. I understand fans being disappointed. I really thought that they were going to make a move, but we'll bring on October, I guess, if they can get there.
Right now, at this moment, I think I have Bailey Ober in the postseason 3-man rotation for a wild card over Joe Ryan, but that's just me.
Yeah, and they've got 2 more months to establish themselves. I mean, let's hear it for Bailey Ober. He was so convincing in spring training that he deserved to be on the team, and they didn't have room, and then they had room for him, and he has lived up to everything that he said in spring training and some. I think he's. We knew he was a good pitcher. We didn't know he was this good.
No, and he gives them. You think about next year too, when you're going to be losing Maeda and Gray. Like if Ober wasn't having this year he's having, they're like, oh man, who else besides Lopez and Ryan is still here? I mean, you've still got 3 viable pitchers going into next year that you can build around, and that's got to feel good for 2024. But until then, it's 2023, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see if this proves to be prudent. They're at the exact 2/3 point, I believe, right now of the season, 108 games. They are up by 2 games. Nobody else in the division is any good. They are definitely the best team in the division. I just don't know if they're going to play like it the rest of the way, but that's why they play the games, and that's why we talk to Phil Miller all the time. Phil, appreciate it as always. Have fun with the grandkids, the inflatables, all the stuff you're doing, and we'll talk again soon.
I'll tell him you said hi, Mike.
I always love talking to Phil Miller, not just for his Twins knowledge, but like I said, for his interpreter skills and able to interpret and put into English Falvey's, which is not easy sometimes, and kind of explain what exactly Derek Falvey was trying to say on Tuesday after the trade deadline passed, and they did not add anybody. I get it. I think it's frustrating, though. I think they're going to regret not making a bigger push, at least in the bullpen. Even if they think they have the right-handed bats that should produce at some point. They've been bad all year at that. They can project all they want. The bullpen is the area of concern for me, because even if they win this division, even if they have the starting pitching, things get tight in the postseason. Starts get a little shorter. You're going to need arms to connect from kind of those mid to late innings to the very end. And I don't think they have enough arms that they trust right now, even if some guys come back healthy. So that's my bigger concern right now. As I talked about last week with Lavelle, I think bullpen is a big concern, and I don't think they did nearly enough. They barely did anything. Kind of a net neutral trade with Jorge Lopez, nothing else beyond that. I think that's going to come back and bite them, but we will see. These guys are paid to do the job. I'm paid to talk about it. We will see who ends up being right. Let's finish with the cooler quickly. Anthony Edwards changing his number from 1 to 5, and this feels like a no-brainer. Basically, he took 1 a while back because Malik Beasley already was wearing the 5 that he wore when he was in college at Georgia. Edwards was, and then Beasley gets traded last year, and Kyle Anderson ends up. Kyle Anderson was here. Kyle Anderson took number 5, even though Kyle Anderson has worn number 1 a lot during his career. So these guys just basically swap numbers. Ant is now 5. Kyle Anderson is now 1. Both these guys seem like they have the numbers they want now. So Ant, I don't know if Ant is being facetious or what, but he basically said the number is going to change him. He's going to see a lot of athleticism, more dunks, just a different level of play because I got my number on my back now. Okay, we'll see about that. If there is another level, If there is another level, he told that to Stadium. If there is another level for Anthony Edwards and it's because of his number, hey, I think Wolves fans would take that because any continued growth in Anthony Edwards' game would be good news for the Timberwolves. And you know what? Maybe they'll sell a few of those jerseys too. Boy, you never know if they might sell a few of those Anthony Edwards number 5s. And get your discount Anthony Edwards number 1 jerseys, I'm sure, too, because those are going to be obsolete here in just a little bit. That'll do it for me today. I'm thinking I'm going deep on Thursday on all of what's been happening and what is yet to come on sports on TV. Jason Gerwin, founder of The Streamable, I'm expecting to have him on Thursday's podcast. He's been on a couple times before, does a great job kind of breaking down all of, Bally Sports North, the future, talking about the Twins, talking about Wolves, Wild, big picture, nationally, things like that. So Jason will be on with me, I believe, on Thursday to talk more about that. So we will see how that all shakes out. Thanks again for joining me here on today's show. I'll be back at it again tomorrow.